We are live. Good evening, my friends. Welcome to Snaggin Not Live. We have myself, Dustin. We have the always awesome Two Stands and the doctor of catfishing, Epic Catfish. How you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good, Dustin. Pretty good. It was a long day at the shop. I tilled the garden and made a big bowl of guacamole dip and handed it off to my wife, and then turned the phone on. Pretty much what I've done all day.
Well, I want to say thank you to Stan for reaching out to you for us, and thank you for agreeing to come on the show. We've been doing this river chat series. This is our fourth one. We've covered the Ohio, we've covered the Cooper River, we've covered what was last week?
Tennessee
River, and now we're in Mississippi. So thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming up.
Well, that's a list of really good rivers. I mean, whenever you're thinking about big catfish, I mean, those rivers are right on my list. I mean, there's other ones that are on my list too, but as far as it's hard to beat the Tennessee. Now, maybe my opinion, probably because it's closer, is the Mississippi for me. I've fished the Tennessee a little. And it's a pretty amazing river.
Yeah, we're a little partial to a river we haven't talked about yet, but that's coming. That's coming.
It starts with a J.
Yes, ends with an Ames.
And I would say though that out of all the rivers, the Tennessee is probably like our. That seems to be the one that we battle against the most. So.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely got some big fish there in the Tennessee for sure.
I think year-round rivers like the James and the Tennessee are probably more predictable than the Mississippi. The Mississippi, it floods wildly. It gets cold water coming down. I know that the Mississippi isn't above 50 degrees right now. And it was just 45 degrees a week ago. We finally got a little bit of warm weather.
And Tim, that was the thing that surprised me in talking with Creel, that even way down where he's at, it could be 100 degrees out there, and the water temperature might even still be below 70 there.
Oh yeah.
So it's crazy how that affects that water temperature, even all the way down.
The Mississippi watershed comes out of Canada, basically. It's right there on the line, right near International Falls. There's a few lakes, Lake Itasca, and a couple other ones that kind of join in. The upper Mississippi River. I mean, I'm not saying you can cast across it. There's at the head waters, you can just about jump across it, but it's a large swamp up there, and it's very, very vulnerable to really cold temperatures because it's not deep, and it runs a long way, fairly shallow, before it gains enough tributaries to become a bigger river. So, I mean, you can get and there's tons of water that comes out of the whole state of Minnesota, and then all of a sudden it comes into it's the Wisconsin River is one of the main ones that comes in. So you got, a handful of small ones, a couple of big ones, and they're all cold water. And don't forget, in that upper stretch where there's a lot of rock topography, there's a lot of spring water that comes into the Mississippi. And there's spring water that comes into it on its whole length. But yeah, I mean, I've seen Julys where, mid-June, where I'm thinking, man, the water temperature really should be 70, 77. And it's not. It's still 62. And the rest of the country, it's 85. Even if you get, like, say, Illinois here, and you go straight out to the James, the James isn't any more south or north than where I live. And that water temperature can be 20 to 30 degrees different because of the ocean effect. Especially the East Coast has pretty gentle winters, really, because of the ocean effect. It's just how it is. So our weather dips down out of Canada from the west, dips down and gets me And I mean, while everybody else is out in shorts and, you know, running their jet boat and doing all that stuff on TikTok and catching big fish, we got snow still.
Well, some of us are out in shorts regardless. But
what's that?
I said some of us are out in shorts regardless. But
exactly. Yeah. Well, I guarantee you would not be out in shorts in our weather, Stan. I'm telling you, not for long. You wouldn't. Definitely not even in April. Shoot, we had snow, I think 7 days ago.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it.
Wow. So one of the things we'd like to do with all of our shows thus far when we're talking about the rivers is do you know exactly how long or on average, or a best guess I should say, how long the Mississippi River is?
Well, it's, I believe, the second longest river. I think the Missouri is technically the longest. I believe it is, oh boy, it escapes me on exactly how long it is. I just know it's a long ass river. I mean, it really is. I mean, I've been on it all the way from the border of Canada all the way down past St. Louis, and a couple of jaunts just a day or two past that, because it just gets too far for me to travel.
Right. Well, the research I've done shows that from that what I found, you are correct. It is the second longest river.
I'm going to guess it's 2,222 miles.
Well, Stan, you would be a little off.
A little off.
2,350 miles.
Oh, I was close.
Really?
I was close.
Just a little.
It's 2,300 miles long.
It is, and the Mississippi River is about 100 miles longer. I'm sorry, the Missouri River. The Missouri River is about 100 miles longer.
Yeah.
So, the one thing I didn't look at was how many rivers feed the Mississippi?
Ooh, more than you can count. Okay, just off the top of my head, on the ones that I've fished, you have way up. You got the Sugar River. You've got the you got the Minnesota. You've got the Cedar. You got the Skunk. You got the Wapsie. You got the Illinois. And I'm skipping a bunch right now. And after the Illinois, you got the Des Moines, you got the Lemoyne, you have the Ohio, of course. You've got the Wabash, and then a whole host of other rivers, including the Tennessee. But the Tennessee dumps in the Ohio first, right? Is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, and those are just basic major rivers that you can go to. There is countless small minor rivers that I would never fish because they've basically got small flatheads and channel cats.
We got Rhonda that's got doing some research as well, and she was telling us that Mississippi River is the second longest river and chief river of the second largest drainage system in North America, second only to the Hudson Bay drainage system.
Interesting.
So if anybody's taking notes, write that down. There will be a quiz at the end of the show.
I'll remember it.
I'm sure you will. Oh, man. If anybody in chat, first off, thank you everybody in chat for coming in tonight. We've got 24 awesome people right now. Thank you all for coming in. We really appreciate your support. We appreciate you watching our show. Sean is not able to make it in tonight. Our Sean is not able to make it in tonight. We'd like to clarify. But again, thank you, Tim, for coming in. So all we ask is that you share as much information as you're willing to share. I know we usually run about an hour, but it's okay if we go in. I'm sure people will stay a little bit longer. So if whatever you're willing to share knowledge-wise about the Mississippi River, everybody's willing to listen.
Let me describe the first 500 miles. Then we'll go to the second 500 miles. So that gives us about 1,000 miles. So that's going to end about where I fish about. So the first 500 miles of the Mississippi, it is a fairly swift It still has a few dams, but it's relatively clear. It's mostly deciduous hardwoods plus arboreal forest up in that range. So you've got everything from soft maples, hard maples, alders to poplar, popple, and of course conifer trees, which slightly stains the water, even though it's clear. Especially some of the other tributaries that come through, like there's peat bogs up there, where these smaller tributaries will just sort of meander through and carry that tannin color. It looks like tea. And some of them are iron filled. So you may go up a tributary off of the Mississippi, and all of a sudden it looks like this. You've been in houses where the faucet has the iron, it's iron stains, everything. I mean, rocks are the same color. It's all got that iron look. And primarily the fish up there you've got some channel cats in probably I'd say 80 miles past the border of Canada, but there's a falls that they really don't exist up above that. You've got some channel cats. It's you've got yellow perch, you've got giant smallmouth, you've got big pike, basically a northern situation. There's some largemouth, but there's a large population of bowfin. There's I wouldn't say there's a large population of bluegill. I did get onto some giant channel cats right above Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and it was actually on a tributary, and we were actually targeting giant pike. And so here we had, it was the boys and I and my wife, and we went into this. It's a small river, not super small, but you could almost cast across most of it, and then it widened out, and then the bottom went from about 7 feet and it dropped into 25, and it had a nice nice round current like this. I started marking fish right off the drops, and they were looking pretty big. And so here I was, I'm like getting excited about giant pike because that's what we went up there for. And so I, of course, use my large shiners like this on a slip float. And I take the flip float and I put it down about 17 feet so that as it dribbles down off of this, I can meet those marks. So the first one goes down and I'm like, this seems kind of familiar. Yeah, got it to the boat and it was about a 14-pound channel cat. I was like, I'll remember the name of that river here in a minute. It was called the Prairie River. I had to think about it, but it's called the Prairie River, and it wasn't that far off of the main Mississippi. And we ended up catching like 9 channel cats, and I think the biggest one was like 16 pounds. But we didn't catch a single giant pike in there. The channel cats were, but I didn't find any channel cats anywhere else. It was just that spot. So early in that season, they must winter there. So I was basically, I think we were there in May, which to everybody else might as well be winter, might as well be December. So, water temperature is only about 41 degrees, 39 degrees. But if you want to go for big pike and smallmouth, that's the time you go. So, that's pretty interesting. So as you go down, by the time you get probably 300 miles south of the Canadian border, it starts looking like catfish and carp water more than it does the scaly toothy fish. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you got laydowns everywhere. It looks like and no one fishes for catfish. So the boys and I went down south. We spent probably an hour and a half from where we were staying, and we went down there and we caught no giant channel cats, but there was channel cats everywhere. We were catching them on leeches. We were catching them on like the old Lindy rigs, the little bottom bouncer things, as we were bouncing the leeches up and down, trying to figure out if there was giant smallmouth.
The walleye bouncers.
And walleye. We didn't catch a single walleye. We had missed the walleye because they come in off the lake, Itasca and all that into the river, but they come in early, pretty much ice out. But anyway, all the catfishermen don't want to hear about those dumb toothy fish, the pickle, the sewer bass, So So as you get farther, the Minnesota River is, I'd say it's a medium-sized river, medium-sized flow, medium flow compared to what I fish. It's quite a bit slower, but it has some of the greatest looking habitat. It winds and meanders. There's holes. It's average 7 foot deep. And then all of a sudden it's into 21, 22 with some of the most beautiful cover ever. I fished it 2 days and I said, you know what? This is so easy. I don't ever want to come back. There was flatheads everywhere. I don't know. In a weekend, we caught like 25 flatheads, nothing giant. And the hard part in that river is discerning areas where giants are going to like eliminate other small fish. It was just at least the section that we fished. Maybe a little bit lower, a little bit higher, I would have been able to do it, but I only had a weekend. So that kind of went off my list, even though it was great. If you wanted to take kids or your wife and say, you know what, get ready, you're going to catch a bunch of flatheads, and they weren't picky. Now the one problem is that you can't use game fish at all. You have to use suckers or bullheads. And that was kind of the tough part. We ended up having to buy quite a bit of bait. And that's one of the reasons why I don't even like going there. Right. Besides the fact it's a long way from my house. So then we ended up fishing at a place called, oh gosh. The only thing I can remember is the name of the side channels. You know, you had stuff like Miley's Slough. You had other things. There was a log jam across one of those side channels. So you got the main river, which is probably reminiscent of what you guys see when you watch my lives at like Rock Island. It's probably about that wide. But there was a major side channel that went into it. It's not a tributary. It's just where the water cut around an island. And there was a log jam that, according to a couple of locals that I talked to, had been there for like 80 years.
Oh, wow.
And they all said it was shallow in the front. And it was 4 foot. But I put my jet right on it, and it basically closed this whole thing off. It was probably 100 yards wide and 100 yards long, and current rushing through it. It was very interesting. And I thought, you know, and a lot of guys described what they do is they fish it at night, and they set up in front of it and just throw out in that 4 foot of water, and they catch flatheads. And I'm thinking, we're here during the day right now, so I'm going to check something, because normally, just like with a barge, wherever that let me, I hate to do that. Okay. So say you got a barge. So of course I've got a small tackle box right here on the thing, just because it just sits there all the time. So you got a barge sunk in the water. You've got water coming into it, and it pushes and it jams underneath the front. Yep. Well, there's a lot of times where it'll only be 4 foot of water, 5 foot of water here, but your barge is 9 foot sunk deep, and you're like, okay, what's going on here? Well, if you throw right in front of the barge, it sinks 12 feet because it has eaten the bottom out underneath that barge, because it's, you know, always parked there. Same thing with that log jam. So I put my transducer, right up, I basically got my jet motor, you know, banging against the wood. It's 20 feet straight down. So it goes from 4 foot, 20 feet straight down. I'm like, okay, we're on it.
Yep.
So I get the boat back out and I jam the boat up onto it so that we can fish straight down right off the back. Yeah. And I think we caught 9 flatheads during the day, like one after the other. And then it shut off. We found other places we wanted to fish more. If I went back there, I would really like to fish the entrance to that once again.
Do you remember if you were using live or cut bait for that?
We were using live bait. We were using live suckers. That's also in the area where you're not even allowed to use a cast net in the state of Wisconsin for shad on the Mississippi.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
I'm amazed I'm amazed at how many states are like that, where so that just reminds everybody out there, check your regulations on what you can and can't use. Some states you can't transport fish from one body of water to you can't transport them on the road at all. So always check. I was amazed reading through some regulations at some states. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, kind of crazy town. A lot of it doesn't make sense at all, but you got to really, really look at certain things that we don't even think about. because walleye will stack up in these shallow, small tributaries during the spawn so thick that you could literally cast net an entire truck bed load. Wow. So that's why. So they just outlawed it altogether. They said no, because people said, well, I was just trying to get shad and I got these walleyes. Well, yeah, they're really vulnerable. You know, they've got sucker runs up there that are so thick that, you know, they're just rubbing together all the way across on like shallow riffles, and you can just see them. Their backs and, you know, fins are out of the water. It's pretty crazy.
Welcome in, Freddie. Thanks for coming in. Earlier, I think I asked a question about if you knew how many rivers dumped into the Mississippi, and Rhonda, in her research again, says that it has over 250 tributaries.
250. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And I've tried to fish as many of those as I can. So far I've covered about 300 miles of it. Let's
wait, 2,000 more to go.
Right. But I'm not going to talk about the last part of it. I'm going to talk about the next 300 miles or 400 miles, because there's a lot left past me. I mean, a ton. You know, so everybody knows pretty much where St. Louis is. We fish above that at Alton a lot. So the Blue Cat line, and if anybody's heard me talk about before, the Blue Cat line stops at Keokuk, Iowa, which is only about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours north of St. Louis by river. And it stops because they are stopped on their migration by a special dam that is a power plant dam, and the water doesn't go through. It's not a clam style where it opens up like this in the water and there's direct flow. It comes from the top and drops 40 feet. Wow. So that stops the blue cats, because immediately above that, you could fish that pretty much the rest of your life and not catch very many blue cats at all. And blue cats, and people that have listened to me before, they know this, blue cats migrate downstream better than they migrate upstream, and that is pretty much a proven thing. If they have obstacles, they don't do well going through obstacles. Like, they won't climb fish ladders. They'll go through like the same thing that like sturgeon and all that go through, you know, like on the James, they've got something like that where you can actually view them. But you know, in the blue cat migration scheme of things, they just don't lock through very well. And there's been multiple net studies, you know, above Keokuk, and they almost never get any.
Yeah, fish in the Mid-South. Funny you say that comment about going the traveling of the rivers. But going down the Mississippi ain't hard. Going back up is the hard part.
Yeah, you know, yeah, it depends on how much experience you have. You know, I've been in the boat where people, you know, they are a little bit worried about it. I, of course, maybe I'm too dumb to be scared, but you know, since I've grown up on it, I'm pretty much hammered down. You know, as long as there's not like gigantic trees coming down, you know, with big hairy branches sticking up, and you just whatever. But I also have the luxury of running a jet. They're expensive to run. They love gas, but you know, if there's a big log in the water and I actually hit it, there's nothing to hit. I'll hit it. It scares the crap out of you, but you basically just jump over it. You know, and with a sea arc, you're not really going to dent it. I've jumped rocks before. I've put dents in a sea arc, pretty big, about the size of a muskmelon before. But I haven't done that since I learned to go. Because actually, with a jet, it's harder to go downstream than it is upstream. Upstream, you got a lot of steering capability. Downstream, it doesn't steer as well. So you got to turn into something. You know, if you're going to miss a rock by 6 inches because there's another rock 6 inches, you know, this way, you gotta steer.
Huh. That's interesting.
We've had a bunch of other people come in. Joe Z, Lance McCougai, Hawaiian fisherman out there. We never called out Chatt there before. KP's out there. 205. Shirley T. Joe Z.
Joe's Bigly.
Let's see. Rhonda, of course, Fisher Whisker, Shirley T. I know I'm missing some people. I was just trying to get some butterflies and sunshine. How you doing?
We got Sampy from the house, Mike Sampson. Takedown Catfishing. KP, how you doing?
Freddie Outdoors.
David Smith's in here. Josie, thank you for dropping all the links. We really appreciate that. 205 Wild come in. 922 Crappie Barbecue. I hope everybody's having a good week, having a good day. If anybody has any questions for Tim, please drop them in chat. I will try to star them. We'll get to them as they come in. And just as a disclaimer, Rhonda wants to let everybody know that she does not claim any truth or facts to any of this. Google is her friend, and she knows how to copy and paste the info.
Nice.
And here's a comment from Freddie. Just waiting on Tim to get them little rods tested.
Freddie, trust me, I want to test those rods worse than you want to see them get tested.
We have Fishin' Fever in the house. Has been listening since the beginning and enjoying the show. Well, thank you, Austin. Appreciate you coming in.
Nice.
Dale Hayslip, how you doing? Thanks for coming in.
I guarantee you won't be disappointed, Tim. I guarantee it.
No, I could see, Freddie had that thing clamped to the table and holding like 3 pounds of lead up, and it wasn't hardly even bowing the rod. I can't wait.
We got Tom from LG Bass in here. Hillbilly Honda, what's going on? Tom says he's here watching tying rigs for the weekend.
That's right. That's right. Tom's in the ladies challenge this weekend.
Nice. Yeah, we got two more. We got 2 more days, but I think there's day and night on Saturday and then evening on Sunday.
Yep.
Okay. KY Redneck Outdoors in the house. What's going on? So like I said, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them in chat. So Tim, we're about how far down now? We're about
300 miles down. and at about 300 miles down, it starts into pretty much mid-Wisconsin, and down. Now you start to get into flathead water. It's a little bit cold up north, up north of mid-Wisconsin, and there's still muskies in the river, especially the Wisconsin River and things like that. So, you can tell if there's still muskie in the river, pretty prevalent, what kind of river it is. It's fairly shallow, fairly clear, a lot of riffles and some slower water, because muskie aren't, they're not like flatheads. They need slower pockets of water. So anyway, from smallmouth and musky, toothy critter type water and scaled fish, sewer bass or whatever you want to call them. Now you start getting into now you start getting into flathead water, and there's some pretty big flatheads up there. There's no commercial fishing up there in Wisconsin or even Minnesota. Matter of fact, you don't really get into commercial fishing until you cross the Wisconsin state line into Illinois, because Illinois doesn't care about catfish. The DNR has told me they don't care about catfish. They never have, and they never will. Wow. That's what they told me. But anyways, it's still pretty good flathead territory, even though, when commercial fishermen set their sights on a certain pool, they will destroy numbers of giant fish, because I have seen the destruction of at least 2 or 3 pools in my lifetime. The pool that I fish is one of them, because I used to readily catch fish over 50 pounds, several over 70 in a year, and a couple in the 80s, and once in a while you even get a high 80s. But I haven't seen that happen in quite a few years. So Sean and I are thinking about searching out a couple of different pools that maybe haven't been ravaged by commercial fishing nets. And see, and that's the thing. It's not just trout lines. It's giant hoop nets, 7 feet tall, 30 foot long. And, if you're a commercial guy, you can run as many of those nets as you want. It only costs you $30 a net for a tag.
Wow.
$30.
And Tim, it's being allowed here on the James River. We can use the gill nets for, catching shad and bait. Yeah. And, Dustin can tell you that you can see how many times we end up with just having the net out 10 minutes and you have catfish in the net So imagine, like you're saying, these huge nets, and there's so many of them. Just they can just the amount of pounds that they could take out in a day. It's just unbelievable.
Well, I've talked to them before, and they report that in the month of June they'll take out 5,000 to 7,000 pounds a day of flatheads specifically. You know, and they say they don't really like to keep big fish, but if you talk to them privately, you know, if they think you're gonna, you know, out them or whatever, but if they don't know you and they're just talking, even when the market's terrible, they take all those fish home and they do fish fries and, you know, all that stuff with their buddies and sell it and trade and barter and stuff like that. But you know what? I'm not saying, you know, I mean, some people make their living a certain way and so some other people don't appreciate it because, you know, I'm a catch and release guy, but, you know, I'm not really downing them. I'm just saying it's more difficult when they set their sights on a certain pool. I mean, there's a certain pool that has never been, it hasn't been good for 30 years because there's a commercial fish market that buys catfish right on that pool. So they just fish the hell out of it. And that it's not too far from Rock Island. So once one pool gets depleted, then they jump over to another pool. And everybody's seen that when the Ohio and all of that started their regulations. Once they started regulations, all of a sudden, certain pools gathered all the pressure. So like Kentucky is really difficult because Kentucky didn't go along with the regulations. But anyways, let's get back to the fishing. I'll quit complaining.
Can I ask you one question along the lines of the fish, though? The reason that is so such a big deal for them to become breeder fish and, you know, what we would consider trophy fish, how many years? What in years are we talking about here to replace one trophy fish?
Oh, on the Mississippi in the area that I'm talking about, it's going to take at least to replace what I consider to be a trophy, which would be 50 plus, 50, 70, 80 pounds. It's going to take, and I know this because of the otolith growth studies. You're going to hear all kinds of stuff. You can Google all you want. How old is a 50-pound catfish? Most of the age growth that they've done from the beginning up until now has been the dissection of the pectoral spines and the dorsal spines. And they grow similar to rings on a tree.
Right.
But what they don't know is through a process called calcification, those rings grow together and they're undiscernible. And we know this because they have aged 90-pound blues at like 12 years old. That is impossible. It didn't happen. It's never happening. Absolutely never. Not 12, because if a 90-pound blue was 12 years old, everyone that fishes would be catching 90-pound blues. Caught any 90-pound blues, Dustin?
No, I have not.
If they were only 12 years old, everybody that's in chat that has ever fished in a river would catch a 90-pound blue. Okay, so we know that's off the table. The inner ear bone, which is the otolith bone, is very difficult to get to, and it's very tiny. And you have to actually dissect the fish, go in there, and you got to pull this otolith out. Then you have to use a special razor knife and slice this thing in half. Then you got to put it on an electron microscope. I was there, helped them, did it, whatever. And flatheads that were between 36 pounds and 50 pounds ranged anywhere from 35 years all the way up to 60 years.
Wow.
And that was on the Rock River in my area. I would suspect that there could be some flatheads that are 50 pounds that would be considerably older, maybe 25 or 30. But still, it's still an average thing. You've got outliers on the whole thing, too. You've got some of those fish that are only 30 pounds are like 40 years old. Some of them that are 40 pounds are only 28 years old. And it depends on which whether it's male or female, how fast they grow up to sexual maturity, and how much pheromone they have in the water. And catfish, and all fish, put off a pheromone into the water, which lets them know how many of their other species are there. And it's all how to regulate their spawn. You know, flatheads will actually skip spawns. If there's too many they'll skip an entire year.
Wow.
we don't know about blues because there's really not been a lot of studies about it, but flatheads will actually do a faux spawn, and their spawn won't be successful at all. Especially in a closed system. That's one of the things that that's why in like a pond, if you take 5 flatheads home into your pond, it's got no running water, no replacement water, pheromones build up in that pond, they don't spawn.
That's interesting to know. Wow.
It is.
We got a question from Freddie. He said 65 plus water temp, nighttime. Where would you start fishing, shallow or deep?
Where are you fishing, Freddie? What's Freddie's situation?
What body of water are you fishing on, Freddie? We doing lake? We doing river?
Yep.
What depth are in the river or lake you're fishing in, et cetera, et cetera.
That question was a couple of minutes ago, so I just started and I wanted to get back to it. So, Freddie, if you want to answer some of those questions, we'll come back.
You probably know where Freddie fishes. Where does Freddie fish?
Freddie fishes all over the place. So sometimes he's lake, sometimes he's rivers. He's on Tennessee. He's everywhere.
He'll be up in Ohio. He'll be down in South Carolina. He'll be up in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna generic answer this with strictly my fishing point of view. I almost never fish shallow. For flatheads, what I consider to be shallow is anything less than about 10 feet. I consider anything over 20 foot to be deep for flatheads on the river. Okay. You can catch big flatheads on the Tennessee in deep water, but the Mississippi, at least in my range, I've never had much good luck. It's anything too deep is more like blue cat current. I don't get too many giant flatheads. It's always, less than 20, but usually more than 10. And so that's flatheads. With blues, I'm going to pretty much, no matter what the time is, since I'm a monster hunter, I'm not out there to just go catch fish. I've caught hundreds of thousands of fish of all sizes. I want to go out there and catch the biggest fish that I can do. So usually for blues, anything less than 20 is shallow to me. Anything deeper than probably 80 is fairly deep. But my target range is going to be between 25 and 45 because I want to fish basically the head of something that holds fish that's deeper during the day. So I'm going to be able to ambush those things at night when they come from where they're at, because I can throw on their face during the day. Once they start moving, it's very difficult to throw on their face, or get close. And I'd say throw on their face. It's kind of a literal thing. I mean, it's kind of a thing. But yeah. I can usually pinpoint fish as long as they're just stationary and get it pretty darn close, even in 40 foot of water, because I've got enough practice, even anchor. And we know this because if I mark 2 fish in a zone, we go up and anchor, throw out, and the bite happens in less than 5 minutes, you pretty much know it was close. I mean, close enough, maybe a foot or 2, maybe 3 foot. But if it happens in like a minute or 2, you pretty much dribbled it right down in front of his face in 40 foot of water with 200 foot of anchor rope out, blah, blah, blah. So 20 foot is shallow to me for giant blues. 80 foot is usually about, I'm not trying to go out there and find the biggest, deepest holes ever, because usually they don't hold bait. A lot of the 80, 100 foot holes just don't, they're decent resting habitat. And I've marked and caught some big fish in those zones, but it's not near as good as that mid line zone. So, and let's talk about the Mississippi. So we're talking about depth, just like Stan said. What's your relative depth? Because that's what you got to take in consideration. Because if I'm on a river that a really deep hole is 30 foot, I might do all kinds of big fish in 14 to 16 foot instead of 20 and more. Depth is relative. The James has got 80 foot. I think it's even got some 100, even though I didn't fish it. I knew it was there. But I elected to fish that 45, 50 foot of water, especially if it's near shallow water. That's the key. If you're near shallow water, that means that bait fish are going to go from shallow to boom when the temperature drops, whenever the water drops, they're going to come off those shallow shelves and go, and then they're all of a sudden vulnerable. Now, Stan and I talked about this last night on the phone. One thing about the Mississippi is that the Mississippi has moon eye, and moon eye are a deep water, dark water bait fish. They come up to feed at night. There's no doubt. They hang out underneath barges, but they don't like light. And while some hang shallow, there is all kinds of moon eye on the Mississippi in the range that I fish that literally carpet the ledge or carpet the bottom in 40, 50, 60 foot. So there is an abundance of deep water bait fish where I'm at, which may make somewhat of an artificial situation for me where other people don't have deep water bait fish. So they might, wherever Freddie fishes, he might be finding his best success in 10 foot of water, because maybe most of the bait fish are up in 10. It's really kind of a unique dynamic with blue cats, since they are so mobile and they're so affected by the yeah, that's right, Brian B. Got my glasses. Matter of fact, they're kind of blue blockers. They're supposed to block that blue, but they got like a weird glare. I don't know. I might have to get some different ones. But that's what makes the blue cats such an interesting dynamic, because they're so highly mobile, and they're very 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 good question, Robin C. We'll get to that one. They're very dependent on bait fish, because although they have time, it's not like flatheads. Flatheads do not have to chase bait fish. They just don't. Bait fish intersects with where they live, and their metabolism is so slow that odds are bait fish are going to come into their habitat before they have to go run around and chase them. Now, if they're extremely active, especially in pre-spawn, right before the spawn, hot summer, some rivers that don't have very much cover, they have to move around. But let's go back to a natural habitat where they pretty much evolved, is the Mississippi. You've got all kinds of wood in all kinds of the right water in all kinds of the right current speed, so they don't really have to worry about moving and chasing fish. As a matter of fact, I know it's kind of anecdotal, but when I was guiding, I could pretty much guarantee that in August I was going to pretty much catch, as long as the water didn't fluctuate, as long as it was pretty much the same, I could guarantee the same big fish was going to be on the same piece of wood for at least 2 weeks. And they'll move and shuffle. We know that by their, telemetry studies, where they put a little radio in them and they check it and whatever. But flatheads are known to inhabit an area. If they're not fed, or maybe they become active, maybe they'll move 10 feet and sit. Maybe they'll move 5 feet over and then they'll go back. Or maybe they'll do a long run, but they're not rooting around looking usually. They're either going to go from one spot and stumble onto something. Big fish. I'm not talking small. Small fish do all kinds of things. 5, 10, 30 pounders to me, 25 pounders are like poodles, kind of. And I don't mean to sound like that, but there is a big difference between what a 50 does and what a 20 does, or even what a 30 does. A huge difference. Because once you're to 50 pounds, you're kind of like the master of the, you're like the beach master, the big elephant seal that they just do whatever they want. So and their metabolism is usually slow, and here's who grows faster, males or females. Males actually grow faster to sexual maturity, but females, they actually grow slower, but they're steady, and they actually get bigger than the males. They may not be longer, but they're almost always thicker. Males that are really aggressive also end up eliminating themselves, because they're the ones most of the time getting caught.
Right.
They are. They're the ones up searching around. They're falling to limb lines. They're falling to people fishing. They're really Freddie, both, and it depends on what pool I'm in, whether they're going to be on rocks or trees. I may fish trees and rocks and drops and direct drops and maybe reverse currents all in one day. But it usually usually they're either on wood or they're on rocks. I usually don't have the same amount of success, even if I just split it up 50-50. Maybe I've got like riprap area with giant boulders, or maybe big boulders that tumbled off of a straight cliff. If they're there, I usually don't have as much success on wood. I have success on rocks, or it's usually one or the other. And I'm not saying I don't catch any on wood and then I catch them all on the rocks, but sometimes it's better on the rocks, or sometimes it's better in the wood. Rocks tend to have faster current associated with them too, because I mean that's how you get rocks exposed, because it usually eats out most of the substrate and you just got the big giant boulders sitting around. So faster current versus wood. Wood tends to get shoved directly, up against the bank if it's in too much current for very long. So whether they like slower current that day or a little faster current, I think is the difference. Epic, why is it hard to fish 2 3-pound blues? Oh, why is it hard to catch 2 to 3-pound blues on the Mississippi River? It's actually because they school up, Avid. When if I want to, I might have to search around a little bit, but you can find them. But they're just not everywhere. It's not like the Potomac or the James, where there's a huge population, at least in our area. I think you're going to have to go farther south for that kind of numbers, because just like I said, blues do not go upstream as well as they go downstream. So the bulk of the heavy population is farther down from St. Louis and usually stays down there. We just happen to get a few giants that come up because they are looking to do their spawning thing, and the 2 to 3 pounders that.
And would you find you would fish for them in areas that you wouldn't necessarily fish for trophy blues?
Yeah, absolutely.
Look for your other areas.
But I have caught, absolute dinks. I've been in a situation where the left side of the boat has nothing but dinks, and the right has giants, and the giants don't come up. Because I'll fish where it's like, say, 20. Well, there's one particular spot I can even talk about right now. It's in one of my first videos. We were sitting on a current break. The left side of the boat is basically 17 foot. The right side of the boat is 50, and I mean in 8 foot. At 17, we're catching dinks, we're catching teeners, we're catching all this stuff, and then just 8 feet over and straight down, we're catching 30s, 40s, 50s. But they would not come up onto that shallow, and I like to experiment on every single anchor, so it's not like I just stay to all the deep water. If I got shallow, I'm throwing stuff up in shallow. I'm throwing stuff up in mid range. I'm throwing stuff right off the drop. But it's usually where that shallow comes, and then you've got where that water, where the bottom drops off, and it's usually most of my big fish come in that trough, and they love to feed those troughs. Now, most of the big fish when I'm fishing that situation. I'll also catch other big fish way out in the stupid main channel where little rises and little deals like that, and I'll throw 90 degrees and let it bounce until it gets caught. And I'm telling you, I've caught a lot of giants like that. Way more giants doing that than throwing up shallow.
I've got this one, Epic. He said, are live bait better or lures better for bass? Again, it depends, but live bait for your big fish, you can't beat live bait because that's what they're eating. You don't have to fool them. Also depends on what you like to fish. If you like to be active in casting and all that, but I think for your biggest fish, your biggest bass in the lake, live bait, I think, is always going to win out because, like I said, that's what they're eating. You don't have to fool them. That's just my opinion.
That's
so. You mentioned schooling. I don't know if somebody said you said it or I've heard it recently. Is it your understanding or your experience that for a catfish, for like, do they tend to school in the same size? Like, do you think like 10 pounds catfish like to school together?
Well, in my experience, running underwater cameras back in the day, and I only ran them on channel cats. That wasn't necessarily the case. You'd see 2-pounders, you'd see 10-pounders. You'd see drum hanging out with the channel cats in the winter. But when it comes to fishing experience, when I've got 4 rods out and I catch a double, they're usually kind of similar. My best anchor, my number 1 top 10 anchor of all time, didn't have a fish under 60 pounds. Well, it had one, but that was way early, and it was way farther back. So the first one was 40, the second one was like 70. There was like an 80, and I'd have to look at my notes again. But we landed 2 fish over 100 pounds and one that was high 90s. So I mean, and I think we caught like 9 fish, and there wasn't a single one under like, well, regardless of that 40, that was the first fish. It was still light out. But the barrage happened, and these things were hogs, and they were all together, and because it was one fish after the other, it wasn't. It was like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. So now that could be the rarity if it only happened one time.
Right.
But it happens often, not to that scale. I mean, if it happened a lot, that wouldn't be my number 1 top 10 anchor from 2007. But I'm not saying it can't be beat, because one of these times Sean and I could beat that.
I asked that question because Stan and I were out last Friday night, and I think we caught 8 fish. I think 6 or 7 of those were either 20, were all 20 or larger.
Yeah,
and we didn't move. We anchored there the same spot for 3 hours.
Yep. Well, my recollection from the James is that it's not that the fish necessarily roam a long way. It didn't seem like that to me. It seemed like they kind of hung out in certain areas. And so unlike the Ohio, they're runners and movers. It's a little bit difficult, but if you find some that are, off a ledge or because of certain current, or maybe they're feeding on something really good, it seems like you can get into that where it's pretty much everything's the same. You catch a lot of 20s. I mean, shoot, I fished the Ohio one night with a couple of friends of mine, and we boated a bunch of fish, and we were even drifting, but basically within maybe a mile of a dam on some sand flats, and all we caught was 20 to 25 pound fish. I mean, we caught a lot of them, but it just seemed like the 20 to 25s were just stacked up right there. But I can tell you that where you find one giant, there's going to be more. Okay. Very rarely do you see just one or catch just one. So sometimes you do just catch one of them. Maybe there's 5 giants, on my sonar. Maybe I'll only catch one because maybe only one came my direction. The other ones went out, or a couple of, there's no guarantee that they're going to get up and always move upstream. Sometimes they go downstream.
Wow. Okay.
But I've seen it where I've marked 5 fish and we have 5 fish on in the first 30 minutes. And that's the only fish that were there. And then when you up anchor and you go down and you don't see any. So, and that's part of how you can interpret your sonar by the size of the marks that you're seeing, because you're paying attention to what the depth is. So you're sitting at 30 feet. If 30 feet, they're 2 inches on the screen, blah, blah, blah. And you got 5 of them and they come in and they're all over, 40 inches long. You can pretty much remember that at 30 feet, 2 inches, this thick, got some red, got some yellow. Then we, and especially if you turn your sensitivity all the way down so that you're not marking anything but giant fish. So, I mean, you're not marking anything on under 30 or 40 pounds and you're still marking those fish. You're like, okay, we got something. And that's something everybody can learn with their sonar, because it doesn't matter if you got a Lowrance. It doesn't matter. I used to do it with a stupid Legend 2000. I mean, that's a hummingbird thing that I mean, it came out in year 2000. So, I mean, and it was dot matrix. It was just dot like that. Right. But I could turn that sensitivity down and I could still mark fish. So I knew that, you could eliminate it, because that's one of the hardest things about, sonar is going, how big are these fish? They look huge or they look small. And you go, well, let's see how big they are. Sensitivity down. If they all disappear, you're like, yep. To me, If they disappear, that means they're under 25 or 30. So I'm like, I'm not interested in that today. I'm not saying I hate 30-pound fish, but I'm just not interested in setting up on 30-pound fish.
Okay.
Unless that's all I can mark, and it's been 3 or 4 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to, I may set up on 30-pound fish, but I'm still going to set up an area where a big one is likely to come through.
Right.
And now, do you think that finding a lot of the bigger ones together is because, well, you know, we've heard you talk a lot about, you know, the simple, we'll stay with the simplified formula for finding big blues with current depth structure.
Absolutely.
That certain area matches the criteria that they feel comfortable in, and that's what they like. So that one area is going to have the biggest blues in that area. You may go downriver, upriver a little bit more, and there'll be another area like that.
I do. I do, especially when the water is low. And what I look for when the water's low is the fastest current I can get a hold of. The deepest and fastest water that there is.
Yeah.
And if the water was low, I'd literally, if I knew that 100 miles downstream or 100 miles upstream had even faster water, well, okay, downstream, because upstream giants don't really exist that much. I've fished that above Alton all the way to Keokuk so long, and you know I haven't caught any 100-pound fish over there. I've caught some 90s, I've caught a lot of 70s, but no 100. So I just really don't want to spend a whole bunch of time up there. Last time a hummingbird was involved with me fishing, the dang thing was zipping around my head. I thought it was a bee. Leave it to Danny Stone to say something like that.
Well, speaking of Danny Stone, he had another comment I started here earlier. He said, I have a spot where 2 sandbars jut out from the bank, creating a pool. A couple of big night crawlers on a hook and catch all the 2 to 3 pounders you want.
Yeah, Danny Stone is in the zone where there is an absolute, I wouldn't say it's like the Potomac, because the Potomac and the James have a heavy population of blues per acre of water.
Right.
They just do. I mean, both of them are on the upswing. They're still in that new lake syndrome thing as far as population. That population on the Mississippi has been equalized for years, and there's so much commercial fishing going on. It does hold numbers down. There's no doubt. The ledge is my friend 80% of the time. Yes, Brian D.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, ledges are something to focus on. There's no doubt. I mean, sometimes I catch them in just a long stretch of hard pan. For some reason, they're out there. You know, maybe the moon eye are scattered all over the bottom, you know, waiting for nightfall. I don't exactly know why, but usually a ledge is going to funnel fish. They're staying deep. The bottom of that ledge, just, I mean, I would say 90% of the huge fish, if I mark them during the day, they aren't out in the middle of nowhere. They are at the bottom of a ledge. And they're, I mean, I can't see them with my fish finder like I could with it. You can't see anything at St. Louis, even if you had the best underwater camera. You go down there with an ROV and you're not seeing anything. But I suspect that they're sitting on that ledge. Like, just say my face was a catfish face. Right here is the ledge where it goes up, and here's the bottom.
Oh, wow.
They do it in tanks all the time. They sit, you know, it just seems to be a natural thing for them.
You talked about that, I remember.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing, too, you know, even when you catch them, like when they're being blues, they don't normally have a bunch of silt on them until, you know, the bite is so terrible or it's winter or whatever. But you'll see them with silt on one side of their body and their belly, but not the other side.
Right.
You go to one side of the river with the river like that, they got the silt on the right. If you're staring at their face, you go to the other side, they got the silt on the left. So you can tell they're like hugging up against these hard ledges.
Oh, great. So I'm getting to a couple of questions and comments that were made a little bit earlier. Like I said, I star them as I go. I just don't want to interrupt while you're talking. So Freddie's question says, is it better to fish above or below feeder creeks that run into the river? And would you fish larger feeder creeks or smaller feeder creeks?
Well, I fish a lot since I have a jet. That's why I bought it. So I could run up these small tributaries and I wouldn't, you know, I could get through riffles and I could go over this and that and the other. Channel cats, absolutely. Feeder creeks like right now, this pre-spawn right now, I could guarantee I could go, well, I can't guarantee it, but it's been nice enough weather. It's been nice enough whatever. I go up any number of feeder creeks where I'm at, small and large, and catch numbers of big channel cats. But as far as flatheads and blues, it seems to hold them back. Flatheads will go up them, but I don't seem to find giants up small feeder creeks. I find them going up major tributaries, something the size of the Des Moines or the Raccoon. Raccoon's kind of actually small, but you know, the Missouri definitely. The cedar, the skunk, and the wapsie, they're decent size. They got pretty good flow. They do have big flatheads. But you know, those average small ones that are fairly shallow, you know, 1 to 4 feet and kind of slow moving, doesn't really hold them. It doesn't hold them for long. But as far as I definitely would fish below them. Actually, I fish above them a lot, but not in them, but above them, because most of the time the sediment comes out and goes downriver, and it actually shallows up. But the front of it, where the main river connects with that feeder river water, when it's up, it actually scours out the front of it more, and then it just kind of deposits a lot of gravel, rocks, sand, stuff like that. So I usually go up above a feeder creek and then go out a little bit.
So to that question, we have, of course, I mean, as you well know, on the James, we have a lot of creeks that feed into the James. But at it being a tidal river, I typically will. So if the tide's going out, I'll fish below it. If the tide's coming in, I'll fish above it. I mean, is that what you would think the same?
On the James, there's only I've seen the feeder creeks on the James. They're what I would call a feeder creek that I would never go into around here if they existed here. I don't know about the James. I have caught some giants in a feeder creek that was flowing really well, but I was targeting a sunken barge. I mean, that's what I was doing. But as far as the other feeder creeks, until you get the size of like the Chick or something like that, you know, those smaller, slow water ones, I really don't go into them because it's not really the habitat that is going to consistently. Some are going to go up there, and you know what? There could be 100 people in chat. I don't know how many people are in there. There's going to be somebody that has caught one in 2 foot of what they've caught a monster in 2 foot. They caught one in 10 foot. They caught one in like the dumbest feeder creek area ever on a hot dog or a piece of chicken. But day in, day out, I'm talking playing the odds. How many, and I try to say this because, you know, y'all know since I don't have a bunch of time these days, I just don't have enough time to do like a real YouTube video. I could probably do some shorts and stuff, but and I'm going to. But so I spend a little bit of time on TikTok, because shoot, I can make a TikTok while I'm drinking coffee in the morning before I go to work. So, anyways, I'll do these little things where, you know, if you want to catch big blues, you're going to have to fish deep, or, you know, whatever. And in my comments, there always be, I catch mine in 2 foot of water in the winter. I catch mine in winter. I'm like, yes, you probably do. But how much time is it taking? I mean, how many have you caught? That's the thing. Sean and I go fishing from August 1, and we end at Halloween. Okay. So we're playing the odds, and how many fish over 50 pounds do we catch in just those couple months? And how many of them are over 70? And it might sound like a brag, but what I'm trying to say is, for only 2.5 months, we catch an absorbent amount of gigantic fish doing what we do. And it wouldn't matter if we decided, well, it would matter because the size of the fish isn't quite what they are where we fish down by St. Louis. But we could do the same thing at Keokuk. We could do the same thing at Quincy. We could do the same. You just keep jumping pools down from the Blue Cat line all the way down into whatever. And, you know, Danny Stone knows, because once they started getting out in the boat and fishing the stuff that him and I have talked about, and Richard and all that, they're like, oh my gosh, it's on. I mean, they were catching giants after that. And it's only a little bit farther out and maybe a little bit farther down. And it makes a big difference whether you're throwing a rod that can, go 50 yards or go 100 yards if you're off the shore. I mean, that was so obvious when I used to fish power plant lakes, or when I used to fish the Illinois. I had I spent my first year at Illinois Central College. This is in Peoria. And it's right along you just come down the hill and there's the Illinois River. So I scheduled some morning classes, and then I scheduled some night classes or evening classes. And I thought, okay, so then I'm going to go fishing. So every day I went down there, but the fishing access, it was just too shallow. And the farthest out I could go was probably 80 yards. Well, the flat before you hit the main channel was probably 4 foot deep, probably for 100 yards. So the next time I brought a lawn chair. So here I am, neck deep in water like this. As the boats are going by, I'd have to stand up so they didn't go like this. So I'm at the main channel near the buoy, 80 yards from the thing. I had to be careful boats didn't run me over, but holding rods like this. And sure as anything, as soon as I got my baits off of that main channel, I'm catching giant channel cats for 2-3 hours and then going back to it. So the girls in my class would be like, ew, what's that? I'm like, oh, that must be a shad scale. What's on your beard? What's on your eye? What's it? I mean, so I got, because you could net all kinds of shad in the shallow water, so you got bait for days, but there was no big catfish up in that shallow water.
So we got a comment. Joe Ziegler said that he's got all of his flatheads and shallows with heavy current.
And Joe, that is possible, especially when they're doing that pre-spawn movement thing. Flatheads will go shallow, but how many 70s have you caught in shallow water? That's the key. If you tell me you were catching a bunch of 70s in like super shallow water with heavy current, I'd be like, I need to revisit that, because I spent years fishing shallow water, good flathead population rivers, 5 to 10, 12 foot of water, big rocks, fast water. And I just didn't have that good of luck with fish over 50 pounds. Now, I caught some, sure, but it just wasn't as consistent as what I was expecting, or what I thought was possible. And I proved myself right. Because as soon as I started fishing more, less fast, but good current and acceptable depth, 12 to 20 foot, 7 to 20 foot. And the closer to the spawn I get, which around here is about July 4th, I'll accept shallower water. It's kind of a little bit of a bell curve. So earlier it's deeper, a little bit closer to July 4th, I'll start accepting 5, 6, sometimes even 4, and slow water, as long as the cover's there, because it's nesting habitat. And the males are taking over these places to kind of show off to the females, hey, here I am, come on, let's do our spawning thing. But as soon as the spawn's over, by the time August hits, I'm still going to fish 15, 20, 22, maybe. That's about the deepest, because that's the range they inhabit. And I'm not saying wherever Joe Ziegler fishes that it's impossible, because I've never fished where Joe Ziegler fishes.
And, that's one thing I think that, what Epic's trying to get across is that the things that he's saying is what worked for him. And that's the majority of the time, in the majority of situations, what will work. Is there, maybe a shallower river where 3 feet might be the 14-foot range. If the average depth of the river is only 10 foot, well, then 3 foot is sort of like in that 14-foot range. So there's going to be those oddball situations.
If the average depth of a river is 10 foot, if they have access to deeper water, that's where they're going. If they don't have, if they're landlocked, say low head dams or regular dams, they're kind of stuck between in pools like a canal or a river that's heavily dammed, but they can't really go through it. If there will be big fish in 10 foot of water or 4 foot of water. But if it's a free flowing tributary and they have a choice, they may be up there in pre-spawn, but as soon as that spawns over, they're beating feet right back to that main river because they got the depth, they got the current, and they got the cover. That's just kind of a tried and true thing. But if you listen to me, I'm kind of a know-it-all.
So, Carpenter Catfish said, "Do you have any advice for a new bank fisherman?"
Yes, I do. Fish fairly quickly. When I used to be a bank fisherman, when I was real young, I would choose spots because they were comfortable. Maybe there's some shade, it looked good, it looked whatever, and I spent a lot of time doing that. It wasn't until I became unsatisfied with the fishing that I was doing and I started hopping around that I learned that sometimes you can see spots with your eyes once you're kind of trained and go, yep, there they are. But there's other things that you can't just see. So as a bank fisherman, if you're mobile and you can move to where you can find those spots, fish often and move fairly quickly. An hour or so at a spot, or if it's at night, just make sure it's kind of like a neck down. Like there's a spot just below my house that we got channel cast. We don't have any. The river has flatheads, but the flatheads don't come up here. I've thrown thousands of baits in this river up here. Never once caught a flathead. It's just too shallow, even though there's 6-foot holes and stuff. But most of the flatheads stay down past a town, probably 20 miles away, Wyoming, where it's bigger. It's got better. This is more like a smallmouth and sucker water up here. We just don't. I've released flatheads in here. They don't stay. They're gone. So as far as bank fishing, you'll find by moving, if you can. Some places have just very limited, access on the bank. If you're going to be a successful bank angler, either move a lot or move your baits a lot. Learn how to throw a big honking surf rod. I mean, really, because, I don't know where Carpenter Catfish, but it looks like he's got a pretty darn good fish there. So he must know something about it. But if you can range out and really and moving baits, not letting them just sit for hours, that is so. I don't even do that in the boat, even though I'm in the right range. Maybe they're going to come and find my bait, but I like to move them every once in a while, and be surprised how many fish I've caught, giant fish, after I've just hopped a bait 6 inches. Bam.
Tim, you've talked a lot about that before, detection zone and strike zone.
Yep.
Catfish will know it's there, but you move it a couple of feet and all of a sudden now it's in its strike zone. The other thing I would add to that for a bank fisherman, Google Navionics, Google Maps, study that stuff ahead of time. We've seen Epic before breakdown, and now we've seen Creel do it and Muskrat, where you actually go online and look at the spots and pick out 5 or 6 that you first, you'll see maybe the depth or the different things like that, neck down. So you can pick different spots and then try those spots out on different conditions, because each spot may be better in a different condition than other conditions.
And you can't really cancel a spot out until you fish it several times in different seasons and different conditions. You can't just say, oh, that spot's terrible, unless you're throwing your baits and it just plunks down and it's only 1.5 foot of water and there's no flow. You can say that's carp and gar water. I'm out of here. I mean, it is. So to add one more thing to Carpenter Catfish is going on Stan's idea. If you watch Navionics, you can see where the main channel will swing close enough to a bank. If the main channel is a long way away, those are areas I try to avoid. Otherwise, I got to get into my neck and bring a lawn chair and hold rods up here and try not to drown or get run over. So if you're going to shore fish, try to get a main channel that's fairly close to where you're at. Now, look at Parker Pursuits. He loves to get out on those wing dikes because those wing dikes are out in that main channel. I mean, the main channel actually connects to the end of those, and there's holes behind him. So he loves to get on the end. He throws off the end. He throws down river, and he even throws up river, which to me is just because Jerry's a savage.
We have
because you're going to lose a lot of stuff throwing upriver because all that wood and that's why fish are there. Wood gets caught on the front side of those wing dikes down in the deep water, and I'm telling you, you could lose anchors, and Jerry's throwing in it.
That was one of Stan 3's tricks before we started really doing the boats, is he would fish a lot of the wing dikes. One of them we now affectionately have called Freddie Point. We gave it named after Freddie when he came down here. But yeah, the same like you said, getting out on the wing dikes got it that much closer to the main channel, and so it was just, that was a good tip that he used to use before we started doing a lot of the boats.
Yeah, with blues, there's no current that I've found that is too fast. There's no current. There's no depth I have found that is too deep to hold some and to actually catch fish out of. But I have found plenty of water that's just plainly too shallow and too slow. So I can narrow that down in my own head. Maybe I could have, went into an area where it's 10 foot flat for 100 yards till the thing, and there's blues up there for some reason. I have caught blues shallow. There's no doubt. But as far as a constant, I would blank way more than I'd be successful.
It's good to know. One more question. 922 Coffee Barbecue said, in a 30-foot lake, fairly clear water, would you fish more towards the dam or the feeder creeks at night for flatties?
Feeder creeks at night. The super deep water, if it is super deep water, I mean, depending on what you've got for cover down there. I mean, we've taken the current out because we're fishing a 30-foot deep lake. I would, of course, like to know how many feeder creeks come into it, whether it's fed by a main river, and if there's current or an old river channel. But I mean, with the information I've got, I would have to choose feeder creeks at night, or where feeder creeks come into where it starts to get a little bit deeper, especially for flatheads. I like to see wood cover in lakes. I mean, I just do. I don't love just plain wide open.
All right. Hope that answers the question. I will say we are at 11:17. I know that we have covered, I don't even know that we've covered the first 500 miles that we were talking about earlier.
Nope, we haven't.
But so on that note, if you're interested in coming back, we can try to do a part 2 if you're up for it. And that way we can cover the rest of what the area that you fish and you're familiar with. I just don't want to keep people up too late. I know it's 11:17 and folks got to work tomorrow.
Yep.
But on that, and I appreciate that. We appreciate that. To that note, the last comment that I starred was made a little earlier in the show. I don't know if 205 is still here, but he said watching these channels for the past 3 years has changed his outlook on fishing. He releases all the big cats out of respect for the species.
That's what it's all about. Awesome.
It is. I mean, that is, and really, it's really kind of a generous thing, really, because I mean, we all could be selfish and keep it for ourselves and do all that stuff. It's actually given everybody else that fishes, especially young kids or new guys or whatever, way better chance at catching monsters or what they consider monsters, whether it's 10 pounds or whether it's 80 pounds.
Right.
It's really kind of a cool thing.
And I say it a lot. It's not the size of the fish, but the size of the excitement it gives you. So
you darn right. And I remember being tickled pink. If I caught a 5-pounder, I just thought I, won the World Series.
Our first big fish here on the James River was, believe it or not, a 22-pounder, and that was like, oh man, this is a giant.
Yeah.
And now it's
hey, a 20-pounder is a big fish, really. A 10-pounder is a big fish, for the average fish out there. I mean, really, world record muskie. What does that even weigh? 27 pounds? That's a world record muskie. World record bass. What does that weigh? 22 pounds?
20. I think it went up a little bit. I think it's up to 24 now, but yeah.
24? 24? 24, John and I don't even take pictures of them. We're like, yeah, it was a nice fish, slunk, I mean, you only have alligator, gar, and sturgeon. Any bigger, as far as big fish in North America, all the other fish are, I mean, who doesn't like to catch crappie? Who doesn't like to catch giant bluegill? Who doesn't like to catch, I mean, I like big largemouth bass. I like all of them, but of course I got to try to catch the biggest fish that's possible, no matter what. So I'm after giant bass when I go. I'm after giant walleye, huge pike, blah, blah, blah. That's what gets me excited. And if we catch 20-pound pike, I'm ecstatic. If we catch a 5-pound bass, I'm ecstatic. We catch a 14-inch crappie, I'm ecstatic. What up, Palmetto?
Well, like I said, on that note, thank you again for coming in and always,
thanks for
sharing the knowledge that you have with everybody that chose to come in and listen tonight. And we definitely look forward to sharing more of your knowledge when you come back to finish off this part for the Mississippi River.
Anytime, buddy. Anytime.
Stan, thank you again for everything that you do. Thank you for coming up and filling in for Sean since he wasn't able to make it tonight.
Dustin twisted my arm really hard to get me to come up and talk about catfishing. It's not one of my favorite things. So Dustin twisted my arm.
Stan never talked about catfish.
No, he gave me all the. He's like, I possibly could probably be 100% sure that I'll be there. So it was a lot of iffy conversation. But yes, Freddie said Tim needs to write a book.
I thought about that, but I gotta get to the part where I don't have to work first. I don't see that coming anytime soon.
Or there's this thing called Freddie. There's this thing called YouTube and TikTok where you could just drop a bunch of video knowledge.
That's right. That's right. And hey, we're getting ready. We're getting antsy. It'll be a while yet for me for giants, but I think we're going to start doing some things in June for flatheads. July, of course, is kind of a wash around here, but back August we'll be on the monster hunt again, and we'll be doing live shows on YouTube. I don't know about I might do a dual TikTok live, but those questions on the TikTok lives that I see, oh gosh, the YouTube guys are so much smarter. I just don't want to hear what made you where you at. I don't care if there's 1,000 people watching. I just don't want to hear those dumb questions. I want to hear guys like Josie and a lot of the guys that you mentioned that are like our regulars. They just love it, and I love doing it.
And not that we need to build up epic lives anymore, but there's going to be some great new things coming out. You're going to see some improved new things with the epic live. So stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss it.
Yep.
Please go check out his channel, subscribe to his channel, and get your lawn chair out and your drink of choice. I think you're going to enjoy what you see.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much, chat. Thank you everybody that came in. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Don't forget, we're going to continue this. I hope everybody. I would be amiss if I didn't mention this. Tomorrow night, don't forget, we have Stan's Friday Night Chat starting at 8 o'clock. Rolls into Jody's Flathead Challenge starting at 9 o'clock to midnight, which then rolls into Ed's after midnight show. So there will be catfishing going on from 8 o'clock Friday night to 4 o'clock Saturday morning. So, and all you got to do is tune in to Stan's show, and we will do the rest of the work for you. We will roll you from one show to the next. That's the new standard for the Friday nights.
The Friday Fishathon.
That's right, the Friday Fishathon. Come join us. I'll be out there tomorrow night. I'll be out there. And the ladies call out challenge is also continuing this weekend. Do you remember? I know it's Saturday. Is there a Saturday morning, 8 to 1?
Saturday morning, I think, is Brian B. It's 8 to 1. Then you got Saturday afternoon from 3 to 9. Or 3 to 9. There you go. Thank you. 3 to 9. It's 8 to 2, 3 to 9, and then Sunday afternoon it's 1 to 7. And Sunday afternoon is on my channel, and we'll have stand day in the morning, 9 to noon. So it's going to be a long day for me Sunday.
Yeah, please go check out whose show is Brian. I think Brian B's is on Sunday afternoon, right? Or
No,
Saturday
Sunday afternoon is mine. Saturday is
afternoon.
Brian B. and Muskrat. I don't know which one.
I want to say Brian's is the afternoon.
All right.
But go check those out if you would, please. It's also a fundraiser, or we're trying to raise funds for breast cancer awareness. I know I think they've raised over $500 thus far, and all the donations go straight to where do they go?
I think it's over 700 now, and it's for the American. It goes directly to the American Cancer Society.
That's right. Yep, it does. That's awesome. So go check that out this weekend. Hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Thanks again for tuning in. We will catch you on the next live. Thanks, guys.